So, which abbreviation is the right one? Swish? SS? Swooshy?
It's Shway. It's Schwarbage.
Okay, that just works. Pokemon Schwarbage is a part of a long running multimedia franchise that will never end.
Endless trash!
And considering the internet's reaction to this game, to say that it's polarizing would be undervaluing it like an expert at a pawn shop. But before we dive in knee-deep, I think I need to clarify a few things. First things first, if you can't tell by my tone of voice and word choice, I'm more or less dour on this. So let me get the typical internet reviewer shit out of the way. Blah blah blah, my opinion, blah blah blah, not an attack against you, blah blah blah. It's fine if you like this. Trust me, I like a lot of video games that are far from Picasso paintings, so don't exactly take it harsh that I'm criticizing it. Unless you're one of those people that buy like 76 copies because people are being mean to the game on the internet, in which case, dear please God, stop watching this video and get a life. Next up, when talking about the game itself, I'll try to refrain from the whole hashtag Game Freak lied, hashtag Game Freak cried, hashtag Game Freak tried aspect of the whole fucking thing. But really, if this is what effort looks like, I would really hate to see them half-ass it. What the fuck am I looking at? Hey, get this shit off the screen, it's starting to hurt my fucking eyes! Also, yes, I will be comparing Schwarbage to its contemporaries in the genre. If they wanted me to treat this like a budget game, they should have priced it like a budget game. Or even if we treat this like a 3DS game, it's still very lacking in content. Yeah, and I know the length of the video might sound like it's one of those video essays, but this length isn't meant to make it look smarter or more valid criticism. If anything, it more so just speaks to me being a mentally insane man that loves video editing way too much. I would recommend if you want to take some breaks or something, I have put time codes of chapters in there. The way I've constructed it, it's much more like shorter videos kind of combined into one. It's more old school in that way. Otherwise, grab some popcorn, get some soda, and listen to a man rant excessively about Pokemon creatures when he should have just caught that pail of water. So after the usual setup of picking your language, face, and name, you get to be introduced with a presentation by this exceptional individual named Chairman Rose. To give you the Spark Notes version, in this world there are creatures called Pokemon. They battle amongst one another, they bond with humans, they help others in dire need, and if you're a real degenerate, they do other things. People who train and compete with these creatures are known as Pokemon trainers, and the best of a particular area or region is given the title of champion. Right on cue, here's Galar's. His name is Leon. He has a battle before our adventure a la Gen 1's intro, and then cue title. Cut back to our house and our longtime friend and rival, Hop, shows up, who, conveniently enough, happens to be the champion's brother. Hop tells us we should meet up with Leon at the train station because 1, he might have gifts for us, and 2, the champion apparently has a sense of direction worse than a 5-year-old at Disneyland. Getting off our couch and picking up her backpack and her hat, we head outside and try to head into town. You know, for a man who can't get himself around, he can sure draw himself a crowd, and a die-hard one at that. Though none more so than Hop himself. This gift that Hop has been yammering about for the past couple minutes is a choice of 1 out of 3 starter Pokemon. The Grass-type Monkey, Garuki, the Fire-type Bunny, Scorbunny, and the sad tadpole boy himself, Sobble. I chose Sobble as his final form not only reminded me of good N64 FPSs, but also British architecture. Hop takes whatever starter is weak to yours, and then after a barbecue you both decide to call it for a day. Once you wake up in the morning, Hop challenges you basically to a tutorial battle, and it's pretty decent, all things considered. It's not that hard, but again, tutorial battle. It's not supposed to be particularly difficult. If you land a super effective attack, Hop mentions it. A bit overkill, but hey, if this is someone's first RPG, maybe this will help him out. Afterwards, Hop notices that one of the Wooloo has broken through a fence to a place known as the Slumbering Wheel. You both rush in order to help save the Wooloo, though all you find is a suspiciously canine-looking Pokemon guarding the forest. Oh shit! It started to use the Fox for Superman 64! Run! Leon comes in to save our asses and is immediately intrigued by this legendary Pokemon that we encountered. So much so, he takes you to his bitter ex-rival and granddaughter of Galar's expert in Dynamax, Sonia. As I guess a thank you for our time, Sonia decides to give us the Pokedex, though she advises us to inform her grandma, Professor Magnolia. Once we get to Professor Magnolia and vaguely discuss her research into the phenomenon known as Dynamaxing, Hop begs Leon for endorsement of us for the gym challenge. Leon asserts that we're still greenhorns and have a lot to learn. He does capitulate as long as you and Hop can put on an entertaining show. Okay, let's just do this. Oh, wait a second. So that shit isn't just a tutorial thing. This'll be one long fucking game. Well, at least we put on a good show, getting the endorsement as a reward, and it seems like fate agreed. Rather than being an apocalyptic meteor, the debris is 2 wishing stars, which can allegedly bring dreams to life. Sonia shows up, says she'll cook, and we take a bit of a siesta and rest for tomorrow. The next morning, Professor Magnolia fits our wishing stars as Dynamax brands, and we are off to the train station so we can register for the gym challenge at Motostroke Stadium. I don't know why, but this cutscene just started to give me a really bad sinking feeling. Sort of like, you know, when you have heartburn, you just go to your chest and you clasp onto it. Imagine that, but for a game being absolute dog shit. Thankfully, Motostroke is only a jaunt in the wild area away from the terminal that you exit from. We pick up an item that has the sound options tied to it. Heading over to the stadium for registration, we start to meet a bit of the competition. Wow. He's an asshole. At least the guy probably won't be a kiss ass. As a part of the registration process, you have to pick a number to go on the back of your uniform. Now, personally, I picked a totally legit, serious, and mature number to go on mine. The receptionist lets us know that the league will be paying for our stay at the Budwin along with every other person undertaking the gym challenge right now. Over there, Sonia seems to be investigating a statue. Its legend goes a little something like this. A long time ago, Galar was swallowed in black clouds, an event later called the Darkest Day. Gigantic Pokémon were storming the towns, and all hope seemed lost. That is until a young hero bearing a sword and shield stood up and decided to stop the madness. Enough anthropology, there's more pressing matters. Seems like a cancelled Dead Kennedys concert wandered its way into the hotel and is giving check-in a hard time. These goons aren't much to write home about. In fact, they get their heads handed to them pretty damn easily. This ruckus soon ends thanks to a fellow gym challenger, Marnie. Team Yell is Marnie's entourage of sorts. Oh, so in other words, they're your e-girl orbiters. At least I can say it's an interesting first impression. This is the 3rd time we're forced to sleep due to plot reasons in this game. Did I switch consoles without knowing it and start playing Persona 5 again?
The next day.
Rose is here to give the orientation and rules of the gym challenge. 8 gym leaders, beat them to get badges to enter the league. Whoever wins the league gets to challenge the champion. Standard shit. After the presentation, Leon takes you aside in order to meet the chairman himself. He takes note of our Dynamax bands, an invention he credits to his company, and then goes on to say that he thinks that this year's gym challenge will be interesting. The gym challenge proper begins. First stop, turf field. On the way over, we see the asshole from earlier again, Beatty. He's allegedly the chairman's endorsee. And trust me, this guy has the most smug and condescending animations I've ever seen in a game, with dialogue to match. Though the kid hasn't really learned that if you talk shit, you should be able to back it up. The kid is also collecting wishing stars for some reason. Turfield's right around the corner, as well as a collision. When we come to from peculiar damage, someone's trying to see if we're okay. It's Milo, this place's gym leader. He's been itching to see how good we are due to our endorsement, and lets us know we can go over to the stadium anytime to challenge him. Now that the intro's out of the way, I guess it's time to talk about my more minor points. After all, you can't run before you walk. Positives first. It's pretty good at the mover learners at every Pokemon Center now, and that it doesn't require an item to use anymore. It allows you to change up your moveset on the fly to test out a new strategy or two. Making the escape rope a key item is pretty good as well, though it's pretty unfortunate that the routes and dungeons have the same design philosophy as a children's coloring book maze on the back of a menu. What else? There's a one-handed option mode that lets you be able to eat pizza while you're playing the game. Okay, these are starting to sound like backhanded compliments. Let's just get into the negatives now. A minor gripe I have with the game is the forced EXP share. Not in the it makes everything easier way, but more in the fact it makes adding members to the team more painful, because this leads to one having to open up the menu, go to the boxes, deposit every single Pokemon except for the ones you want to train for however long, do the same thing, except for this time withdrawing them all, when a simple toggle or something could cut this time massively. Because otherwise, 1 or 2 Pokemon of yours will be overleveled. Overworld encounters are also very poorly implemented. When you add a change like this fundamentally to your series, you have to plan and design accordingly around it. And Sword and Shield really didn't do that well. Being first striked by the enemy doesn't really harm you in combat, for example. All I'm saying is if I get rammed by an animal, I do expect them to have a leg over me in terms of speed. Though considering how bad the spawning is, it's a rather good thing that it's not there. And then you got the encounters that are somewhat random based on RNG. Pro tip, don't even try to sneak around to get them. Run around and startle them. Sneaking's basically fucking useless. Especially when these guys are about as easy to see as a needle in a haystack. This certainly feels like a change that was made mid-development, which was unbalanced as a result, which is 100% accurate. Back to the main story, Sonia calls us over to look at this geoglyph. She thinks it has something to do with Darkest Day, but I don't know, man. Maybe they were just a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan's movie Signs. Our first gym challenge is herding sheep. It's a lot more fun than it sounds, trust me. The gym challenge is one of the few things that has a cohesive vision, at least at the start. After the challenge, we have to beat Milo in a battle. It takes a bit, but in no time flat, our team eventually catches on to his like wildfire. On our way over to Hullberry, we help out this cyclist whose Team Yell is giving a hard time. As a reward, he gives us a bike. Let's see what this bad boy could do. Get me out of this fucking clown suit. This route's Battle of Hop also adds critical hits to the things with unnecessary tutorials. But you know what, if I'm gonna have to bike around Galar like a fucking clown, our next performance might as well be at Hullberry. Pokemon's not just about the battling though. There's a lot of side modes that are sort of meant to stimulate a bond between you and your virtual monster. Sort of like a Tamagotchi, but without the death. The main hub of these features in this game is in a mode called Pokemon Camp. You can dangle a toy around and throw a ball and that's about it. To be fair, there is also cooking, but it's pretty much the same bare bones minigame with the exact same QTs every time I've used it. And before you bring it up, yes, Refresh and Ami were just as shallow in previous games, but you still had the tactile interface to still feel like there's some form of feedback in those modes. You know, because it used the touchscreen. Sword and Shield instead decides to opt for motion. And it honestly feels like an early Wii shovelware game when it does. Now, just keep this in mind, I am not a hater of motion controls. No More Heroes uses it great to accentuate moments in gameplay, and gyro aiming can help add the precision of keyboard and mouse to dual stick aiming. However, these motion controls barely respond and oftentimes constantly fail at tracking my hand movements. I'm not sure if it's due to being purely gyro and having no IR sensor at the top of the switch or something. Either way, it feels like a shoehorned in mode because, you know what? Fuck it. We need to find a way to get Sylveon to evolve somehow after all. And yes, I know, the motion controls are optional, but that just makes Camp a couple of RE4 QTEs built on top of a GIMP version of Nintendogs. There's also Pokejobs, which is a side passive way you can gain EXP while not playing the game. They're fine, but I swear to God, if I see this in one more JRPG this generation, I am going to blow a fuse. Why is this mobile shit in $60 video games? And then we have the trainer cards. They exist. I have no idea why they're this detailed, to the point you can even decide lamination, but it's there. Back on the main story, we run into BD trying to get the attention of the chairman, trying to say he's devoted to him. Emphasis on the word try though. However, much like a cat with a laser pointer, Rose's attention immediately shifts to us. Rose decides to cut us a deal. After our battle with Nessa, he wants to talk to us one-on-one. Heading over there, the second gym is a generic switch puzzle. Considering how interesting the last puzzle was with directing the herd, this is kinda underwhelming. The gym challenges from here on out will pretty much be hit or miss. So after another not so hard battle, Nessa has a fucking meltdown when we beat her. Though I don't get it, when we met her she seemed pretty relaxed and chill. Why exactly is she boiling over? Ah, fuck it. I'll just take the badge. When we get to Diamond Rose, it turns out Sonia is also joining in with us. Not only does Rose thank Magnolia for her research on Dynamax, helping him create the invention of the bands themselves, but also the power spot detector, which allows the energy to be in the stadiums for these kaiju-sized transformations. As a show of thanks, and to further Sonia's research, he opens up Hammerlock's vault, which might be the key to understanding the secrets of Dynamax. But that's enough for now. Apparently Kaboo, the third gym leader's got himself stuck in the mine. We need to help him out, so we can challenge him. So we encounter and beat up those Team Yell bozos again, and now it's time for things to really heat up in Motostroke. Music can set a tone to a video game's background events, especially in JRPGs. So how exactly does Schwarb? Gen 8 probably has the worst soundtrack in the entire main series. There, I pulled the fucking band-aid off. Now, before you hold up your pitchforks, I know, both people that love and hate this game at least enjoy the soundtrack here. Let me explain why I don't concur. Let's start with the Galar Mines theme. As a track, it's okay, I guess. but it doesn't really give me the vibe of a mine or a cave. It's more like a elevator music at a spa, or at least something more industrial concerning the electronical instruments used. That's the other issue I have with the soundtrack, the instruments used for sampling. Now, I don't know if I'm just crazy or what, but every time these instruments go off and pop, it causes my ears a little bit of pain. People can complain about hoeing horns all they want, but at least Gen 3 didn't make me feel like I had jackhammers in my ears, simultaneously giving me bouts of tendinitis whenever I listen to a track. Just to be clear, this shit isn't Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood bad. It's just bad enough though where every time it can just pop off, it just gets me slightly more annoyed at this game. Not that that was necessarily anything special throughout this playthrough. However, in order to prevent the next 2 tracks in this video to be me just rambling on about music bad and leaving it at that, I did consult someone with a fairly knowledgeable understanding of music, so I can articulate my problems a bit better. Next on the list, the Wild Battle theme. Overpowering is the one word I can use to describe my issues with this track. Every part just feels overly energetic with no calm breaks in between. This might sound good on paper, but after the 100th time of hearing it for battling wild Pokemon, you're gonna go fucking crazy. It sounds like a Pokemon battle theme, I'm not denying that, but on years and years of substance abuse. Finally, let's talk about the gym battle theme. The one thing I'll give it, it's ambitious. I mean, there's not exactly many dynamically changing, EDM, crowd cheering, boss themes in this world. However, within this complexity, it doesn't really nail the landing on any of them. For a dynamic track, it doesn't feel like a lot of it changes no matter how far you are in the battle. I mean, the vocals do get added later on during the final Pokemon bit, but otherwise it's not really building on the song, but rather remixing it slightly. Now, if I had a strong core composition, it would be fine. However, this song isn't really much to write home about in that regard either. I felt much less like I was in a challenge that I was gonna have to overcome, and more like I just walked in on a shitty rave. It would diffuse what little tension a gym battle had. Though there was one thing that caused me the most pain in this track. The fucking crowd. I don't know what tin can telephone Game Freak is using to record these, but please God, just get a new microphone, because this is horrendous. It's sort of like I might complain about the instrumental samples, but put up to 10 to where it actually does hurt me, whether it be the dog-a-woos, or using a crowd like in this song. All I do know is this just makes me doubly happy that VA work isn't used in this game. The chance being off-key from the rest of the song just makes this more blatant to see. Next time, Game Freak, when you want to do a track like this, just borrow the Rhythm Heaven guy. I know as a company they really don't like asking Nintendo for help, but that guy knows his shit. I hope I was able to explain myself relatively well without coming off like a fucking idiot. Though knowing me, it was probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Back in town, after testing our metal with Marnie, the next day it's time to melt it to the next gym battle with the hard-working leader, Kaboo. The gimmick is you and a trainer get into the same wild Pokemon fight. Either you have to defeat it for 1 point, or catch it for 2. Same thing goes for your opponents, you have to keep an eye on what they're doing and try to outplay them. This challenge gives me major Pokemon Coliseum vibes, which I can appreciate. I mean, it's not particularly hard as the AI is about as simple as a Happy Madison movie, but still, worth a C for effort. He still falls about as easy as every other gym leader we've encountered, but thanks for keeping the light in your old gym challenge burning, Pops. When we're about to leave Motostroke, the first 3 gym leaders are there to congratulate us. The 3 do this as it's not often people can make it past Kaboo. I'm pressing X on that one, but I'll take their word for it. Though as we enter the wild area, Hop and Beat have a clash of egos, breaking out into a battle. Let's leave those 2 for later. Instead, let's just laser focus on Hammerlock's mysterious vault. On the way over, we run into Rose. In Hammerlock Stadium, he explains that the place is just one giant power plant running off of Dynamax energy, with a pole at the top acting like a conduit for it, sucking it all in. This keeps the town self-sustaining. Going over to the vault, though, Sony has made an interesting discovery. Unlike the statue from earlier, the murals in the vault depict 2, let's just say interesting-looking fellas over here, who appeared to be later on crowned royalty. So it seems like this legend is more sketchy than a Smeargle. Anyway, the next town up on our gym challenge is Strawonside, which I swear sounds more like a deep dish pizza place than anything else. So let's get all the beaten to death points about the graphics out of the way first. Multi-hit animation bad. Walking animation bad. Game is PS2. Swarbage's visual fidelity has been discussed to death. However, for a console like the Switch, I would say graphical fidelity matters much, much less over art direction. Hell, Xenoblade Chronicles is one of my favorite games of all time, and the original version of it has a cast full of potato people. But the execution for the world is so good, it makes you forget that everyone would look really good, mashed up, and served as a side to some steak. Galar's dexterity is definitely low in this regard. First up, what is Galar as a region anyway? And I'm not talking about, oh, it's not Britain. Oh, it's sports ball. I mean, what is the through line geographically of this place? Or at least the general culture. For every other region, I kind of have a general idea of what it's like, except for Kalos, which has a similar design philosophy of Galar of throwing biomes at the wall and seeing what sticks. Thankfully, we're at no better point to talk about it, because Stronside and its surrounding towns is a near perfect illustration of the issue I'm talking about. Stronside itself is a smaller, desertish town, sort of reminds me of Arizona or something. Easily comparable to, say, Ore from the GameCube games. To the right we have the city of Hammerlock, a big urban center of Galar, built around a giant, gothic castle. And to the north we have the Glimwood Tangle, looking straight out of a Hayao Miyazaki film. And to be fair, there are areas that transition from one place to another. But because of the stark contrast of them, it doesn't feel like enough. You are gonna need a full route to get that gradual environmental transition. Because otherwise, what you're left with is an aesthetic with the consistency of those N64 Unreal Engine remakes. While we're still in the ballpark of aesthetic, I gotta say, not a big fan of the whole soccer look every gym leader has. All the in-game logos kinda just make the designs blend together for me. They did accessorize trying to make the designs stand out, though with some of them I felt like they had...
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
ulterior motives. A bit weird the Rivals don't seem to have this limitation though. As we close the section about visuals off, I gotta admit, not a big fan of most of the new Pokemon introduced here. I mean, there's no real atrocious designs, but none of them really leave a long-term impact to me. I'm not gonna get too into why I don't like these new designs, because I swear people discussing new Pokemon designs always devolves into shit-flinging. But keep in mind, I'm not a Gen 1er, and if there's one Gen where it's really detrimental that I don't really have any new favorites, it's this one. Because playing with Pokemon I was already familiar with made seeing Galar's flimsiest parts straightforward. Adding more designs to a roster already in the 800s is much less important to me than nailing everything else this game introduces. Catching up with Hop, that fight with Bede was so disastrous, he challenges us to a battle to help repair his self-esteem. That didn't go the way he thought it would, did it? Stronside's challenge is so good it's ghastly. This one involves going down a Pachi slot-styled maze inside of a Carney teacup, rotating the control stick left or right to spin the vehicle that direction, while having rest areas in between each maze in order to break up the pace with trainer battles. With the ghost types found in Galar, it's a really fitting motif. And I like it not just because it's such a departure from the rest of the gym challenge, but unlike real teacup rides, it doesn't make me hurl over all my surroundings. It all just comes together to create the most consistent gym in the entire set. Sword's 4th gym is the same challenge but recolored. Kinda wish they made it unique, but it gives me less work to do for the video. It's about time we cap it all off by taking the badge from Phantom of the Schoolyard over here. Outside, we run into Sonia. It seems her research into the myths of Galar's heroes has brought her to Stronside. She wants our insight to a replica mural from thousands of years ago, a depiction of the hero of Galar's legend. Her request is cut short though, thanks to a big kaboom off in the distance. We investigate and oh, it's this pampered press. You see, Bede's trying to excavate this wall over here because, okay, honestly, if we all could look inside the kid's head, we know what he's thinking. Kicking the kid to the curb again, Rose stumbles into this horrific scene.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Rose's punishment is kicking Bede out of the challenge, which makes Bede's prideful ego take a bit of a hit. Punishment came a bit too late though. Bede's destruction caused the mural's wall to fall, showing a statue that depicts two Pokemon that look eerily familiar. Sonia, you're looking a bit too excited there, buddy. This causes Sonia to have the revelation that the two Pokemon depicted here must be connected to the hero statue at the end. However, with the ever-growing contradictions, she's gonna look into it a bit more. While she does that, we head to Bella and Leah for our next roadblock in this gym challenge, the glamorous, grandmotherly gym leader, herself, Opal. I want to talk about the generational battle gimmick that Game Freak shoehorned in for merch, usually of the banned variety. This time around, it's Dynamax, which for me stumbles on both a conceptual and mechanical level. It makes the Pokemon appear bigger, when in actuality it's distorting space in order to make the world itself smaller, powering up their moves as well. There's also a bit of a side gimmick as well called Gigantamaxing, which also affects the Pokemon's design, as well as giving them a special move they wouldn't obtain otherwise. These range from fine to, oh dear god, they made the World Trade Center a Pokemon. The logic of maxing is just overly convoluted for what I assume is 50% just an excuse for Ash to ride a giant Pikachu in the next season of the anime. But that's just lore shit. The mechanic itself, not executed that well. Maxing comes off like a weird Cronenberg Cryptid-esque hybrid of Mega Evolution and Z moves. And you know, I can understand the thought process. On one hand, you can refresh old Pokemon with new designs without having to deal with this thing that changed the balance of many Pokemon in the meta, while at the same time, giving an option to every Pokemon, which could increase viability roster-wide. However, for me, it feels like way too much of a buff, at least in single player. It boosts your HP 150 to 200%, makes all your attacks overwhelmingly powerful ones, and this effect lasts 3 turns. Just to add a little bit more pizzazz, whenever you land these attacks, you either get a stat change, or it adds weather effects. Which is sort of like saying, hey, look at this perfectly fine nuclear warhead over here. Let's add an EMP at the top, you know, just for extra destruction. And since the AI has the consistency of a stack of potatoes, I avoided using it throughout the main campaign as much as possible because it made every gym challenge feel like such a cakewalk. I'm not exactly an expert on competitive, so I can't speak how it affected the meta, but it's one of the reasons I'm disinterested in online battles in Swarbage. They had an idea of what they wanted to do visually and gameplay-wise, but the particulars are so muddled, it leaves me with a battle dynamic that just feels unfocused and gimmicky. Turning back to the main game, Opal's challenge is pretty lame. Reflecting her being a mentor with a heart of gold, she gives us a quiz that isn't quite as bold. She uses this to find a successor, though no results so far from this endeavor. The rules are pretty plain. You get a question right, and your stats gain. You're punished if your response is wrong, decreasing stats and making the battle prolonged. Compared to the previous gym challenge, Bellonlea is as interesting as a puddle. However, lying to Opal about her age did give me kind of a chuckle. At the end, we proved to be the winner of this conflict. Fuck this rhyme shit. Following our victory, Opal asks if we can accompany her to Hammerlock, which like good little Boy Scouts we agreed to. While there, we run into Bede, still disgraced, though conniving a way to get back into the gym challenge. The conversation's cut a bit short though. Geez, I get it, lady, you like the color pink. That's no reason to be so handsy towards him. With Opal finally finding her, successor, she and Bede head off so that he can train for his redemption of sorts. After that, unique encounter, I think it's time we talk about one of the most missed opportunities in the entire Galar region, the wild area. I just want to make one thing perfectly clear. I did not expect, nor want, the Switch games to be something like this. I barely think Game Freak is competent enough to design a linear route. They simply put don't have the resources, knowledge, nor manpower to create a satisfying open world. Even with that understanding going in, for a feature with such a prominent marketing push in promo material, the only words that come to mind when I think of it are forgettable and mismanaged. But I think the best way to illustrate my issues with the wild area is to turn back the clock and look at another game that attempted something very similar. Yeah, I know, the wild area N64 tree thing might make any comparison to Ocarina of Time seem passé, but please, consider the following. Let's start by pulling up Ocarina of Time's map of Hyrule. In that game, Hyrule feels sort of the glue that connects all the areas together. Kokiri Forest, Hyrule Castletown, Death Mountain, and even Zora's Domain all filter you back into there. And this repeated transport and use of Hyrule Field is what I would argue burned the layout of it in many players' heads. The game also hides various upgrades throughout the world itself, which you attain by using items from later areas. Not only does it add a sense of progression, but it also helps your quest from feeling like just a long line interspersed with pit stops. So what does my baby's first game design analysis have to do at all with the wild area? It's that, in comparison to a 20-plus-year-old N64 game, the place just feels barren. Going over to the wild areas map, it just feels disconnected from the rest of Galar. You're really only forced to use the place twice throughout the main campaign, which yes, reduces backtracking, but at the expense of really being able to explore it without a few flights from the Corviknight taxi service. And even if you do go back, it's not like the wild area has much to explore for, and that's because the place only really has 2 ways of blocking you off. MMO-style level gating and, the clown bike's water upgrade. And yeah, I really don't like the whole look of the bike in this game, but if you're gonna attach surfing to it, why not go all in? I'm imagining multiple attachments that add functions to your bike. For example, one could sort of let you ram rocks that are in the way to clear a path, or another could help you traverse marked paths on a mountain that's way too treacherous to climb otherwise. It would be sort of similar to the whole Poké Ride system from Sun and Moon, and would allow the wild area to be much more interesting in terms of its geography. Right now though, despite being labeled in separate zones, it all just filters into one single gooey mess in my memory. What you see is what you get. There's no real caves or little alcoves for some hidden goodies that aren't just out in the open. And while there are landmarks, they're mostly just parade battle spawners, but I'll save that ramble for later on. In short, rather than making the wild area as a central hub and designing Galar from that central point, they took their standard route design, stretched it out to make it bigger, and plopped it in the middle of the region with no care for how it flowed. After our little mental detoxification, we go over to talk to Sonia, only for a sudden explosion to interrupt us and Leon to come up. Apparently it's one of the reactions from one of Rose's experiments, and it might cause Pokemon to randomly Dynamax all over Hammerlock. Sonia then interjects that she wants you to focus on your gym challenge and leave threats like this to the adults. And considering the adults we're supposed to trust here are a lackadaisical college graduate, and the British version of the main character from Big, it doesn't inspire much confidence. Anyways, it's only a quick hop out on a few skips past routes 7 and 8 to the 6th gym challenge in Sirchester, a place so cold that it seems frozen in time to Galar's ancient days. And from there, all we really need to do is make a beeline for Melody's gym challenge. The challenge itself is a mixture of the old dowsing minigames the Pokemon games used to have, and avoiding thin ice that could break under your feet. If you get trapped in one of these pits, you're going to have to restart from your last safe zone. All of this while encountering and battling trainers along the way. And I wouldn't say this one's bad, but more so just tedious. It's like walking on eggshells. I won't say that it didn't try though. The part with the fog was actually kind of interesting, since it relies on your controller's rumble rather than the visual aid for that entire section. But it's only used for the last maze. Best phrase to describe it? Overwhelmingly adequate. Our performance in battle, however, was anything but. Thoroughly defrosting Melanie's defenses, and allowing us to claim the 6th gym badge. After some good old-fashioned Galarian parenting advice from Melody, it's time to follow up on those statues Sonia found in Strawnside. While sitting down in a local restaurant, Sonia zones out to think more about her research. Oh look! It's a tapestry with those royal assholes from the castle again. It depicts the end of the legend, with the two odd-looking fellows doing a seal of some sort. More specifically, to the sword and shield Pokemon depicted on the Strawnside statue. This causes the gears in Hop's head to start turning. That Galar's heroic Pokemon of legend might be the Pokemon we met at the beginning of the game that suspiciously looked like it guarded a sacred forest. This revelation blows Sonia's mind wide open, and starts to reflect on how much joy she's gotten from what seemed to be at first her grandmother's undone errands. She takes us to the hero's bath, mostly inhabited by Pokemon nowadays. Allegedly, this is where the heroes licked their wounds after that legendary battle thousands of years ago. Hop wants to recreate this, and you know how this goes by now. Sonia's next order of business is looking into the Slumbering Weald, while ours is getting to Route 9. I've skipped over majority of the routes in this game because they're kinda just shit, but I'm not gonna lie, 9's actually pretty good. We run into the bike guy from earlier who's still having problems with Team Yell, so once we knock out these goons and they move the Dreadnought out of the way, he rewards our help by giving our bike water wings, allowing us to find islands throughout the water of this blizzardy beach. Route 9's map is far from perfect, but it's interesting enough to make you want to explore with the bike's new function. Top it all off with an actually good transition, and in terms of Galar's map design, this one stands heads and shoulders above most of the game. Though it appears all good things must come to an end. And at the end of Route 9, someone seems to have locked Spikeman from the inside, not allowing any gym challengers through. Despite Nintendo Switch Online being one of the most faulty services I've ever had to use for a console, it barely has to do with any problems I have with Swarbages. It's more that Game Freak is the king of making some of the worst UIs I've ever had the joy of interacting with, and the YCOM is no exception. It's based on the stamp system, which not only make the UI cluttered and kind of a mess, but is also really inefficient in a lot of ways. You can have an unprotected stamp in order to have a trade or battle request with anyone, or you can set it behind a password if you want to keep it friends only, which can help if you're just looking to trade or battle with randos, but if you just want to do shit with your friends, it's kind of a crapshoot. Doubling the link code to 8 characters was certainly an improvement. It's sort of like a band-aid on a massive gaping wound. Can't we just have a lobby or a dedicated friends list in order to give invites to, or I don't know, Maybe bring back the PSS instead of trying to Windows 8 your online UI every fucking time. Surprise trades occurring in the background are the only benefit I think the new system has. Having these requests always show up on screen takes up a bit too much space and is just distracting. It's visual noise. Also connected to the UI, they decided to drop the Global Trade Center from the main games and instead dump it on Pokemon Home, which I'm sure boosted Home's numbers, and trust me, this won't turn into a review of that. But it's sort of like a giant pulsating Samsung-shaped tumor coming out of the Nintendo Switch dock. It's similar to Microsoft's Smart Glass and how obtuse it feels. This isn't like the gamepad, where it's something included with the console. I have to break out an entire separate device or boot up a separate app in order to use this feature that's been with the series for a long time. It's more puzzling than anything. Continuing with transfers between mobile apps and the main games, raid battles! I respect the idea of trying to add a cooperative element of Pokemon after years of being either single player or PvP, but I just don't think it's done well here. It mostly just equates to waiting for one of the box legendaries to do a super move, or waiting for one person to pull off a Dynamax. Every raid kinda just feels like the same shit, different Pokemon. I really don't get the whole point of the raid shields. Making it where you have to do a couple attacks before you can damage their health again just makes the battles drag out for way too long. Oh, and don't worry if you can't get 3 other people to help you out, because the AI has such great teams as a level 10 Eevee with Helping Hand, or a level 10 Magikarp with Flail. Amazing! To wrap up, I think all the online features being so half-baked leaves me with very little drive to play past the main campaign. Jumping back to that, we still need to find a way around that gate, don't we? Marnie, being a local of Spikemuth, knows another way in, which he's perfectly willing to show after a quick battle, of course. Heading into town, Spikemuth's a very unique area of Galar. Spikemuth, you see, is not only just a town, but it's also the gym itself, and Team Yell's home base of operations, which spreads the goals of a very small location way too thin. As a town, the place is a Final Fantasy XIII tier hallway, the only enterable building being a Pokemon Center. All the other ones are kind of just left shuttered down and closed, which makes it to where once you get past the gym challenge, the place doesn't have much else to offer. And Spikemuth is not built on that metric either. It's just a gauntlet of Team Yell battles, which, compared to the previous 6 gym challenges, kind of feels like they were just struggling to come up with ideas for puzzles at this point. Hell, even Red and Blue's Rocket Hideout wasn't this simple. Annoying, yes, but at least it wasn't just a hallway. After the gauntlet though, I guess it's time to meet the gym leader and Marnie's brother, Pierre, and just about when he's putting on a concert too. I'm sorry, I just had to show you how awkward this scene is. Even just a text box with lyrics would be less awkward than random mic noises. Once he notices us, Piers goes on about he's a really shit gym leader who can't even Dynamax. However, like a true showman, he still wants to go on with the battle. But despite his own self-doubt, Piers was probably the most difficult gym leader throughout the entirety of the challenge. His Obstagoon sent me packing to the Pokemon Center the first time around. It's just really good team competition. If the guy did have D-Max, he'd be near unstoppable. Though I will admit, part of that might just be due to me being an idiot, considering he reads his attack names out loud. Combine that with a really good song that doesn't make my ears want to blow up, and you got a battle that makes me consider it one of the game's high notes. Though with our encore, we take down Pierre's and earn his respect. Piers gets a pretty good family reunion of sorts. Piers wants Marnie to take over the gym for him, but she retorts it'll be kinda hard for her to do that if she's champion. Good luck with that one. Back on the road, we're greeted with an explosion. Such an encouraging sign, isn't it? Though whatever this threat seems to be, it's grabbed Leon's attention. We learn what it is when we catch up to Hop. Whatever Rose's experiment was from earlier, it's not a one-off. Wild Pokemon are randomly Dynamaxing again. Thankfully, this whole ordeal leads us back to Hammerlock, so we can challenge the 8th and final gym. Back in the Galar map overworld, because truth be told, Gym 8 doesn't have enough raw footage to really stretch out here. While most of the sections before this have been about gameplay features, or about Gen 8's general look and feel, I put a section to discuss the rivals because I feel like they can be a good motivator to push forward and get better at a game. You know, your Wario's, your Shadow the Hedgehog, your Verge... Wrong Virgil. Better, but somehow less related to what I was getting at.
Now I'm a little motivated.
Anyway, let's begin this little rival recap with a hop on over to Hop. He's known the main player for a while. He highly respects his brother and loves him as a champion and hopes one day he can reach up to his success. But at the same time, when he starts to doubt himself, he feels it's stifling and he wants to break out of that shadow. Which, you know, perfectly fine foundation for a character arc. The problem though? The only thing more self-sustaining than Hop's personal issues is probably a Mobius loop. He goes through these constant bouts of, "Oi man, I didn't know if I was worthless or not. I thought I was disrespecting Lee's name. But this battle with you proved to me that I'm not until my next depressive episode. And I don't know what the fuck this accent is." It's to a point where I think his emotion relapses more than most addicts. And I know Hop isn't as bad as a certain other H-named rival in this regard, but early on it felt like I couldn't walk 2 steps without this kid showing up and jammering on at me. The game kind of giving Hop such a fine focus makes it so that the other rivals don't have times for their concepts to grow, and they feel underdeveloped as a result. Next up is Bede. Rose's endorsement of him is due to the fact that Bede was an orphan that Rose happened to adopt. Bede desperately wants to impress his adopted father, at any cost, which also leads to his smug attitude, believing he's better just because he has the chairman's blessing. However, after getting kicked out of the gym challenge and becoming Opal's apprentice, it gives him a new perspective on life and makes him wonder, for all of his bluster he had earlier, was he just a pawn to someone that didn't even care enough to remember his name? Again, just like Hop, very solid base idea. And hell, he's probably my favorite part of Gen 8. His rags to riches story and smug attitude remind me of a less psychotic, but kid-friendly version of Dio Brando. And I don't mean that dismissively, though maybe Game Freak should keep an eye out for a manga author who keeps his youth by draining the blood of those that have wronged him, showing up at the offices. The issue is, the plot doesn't really give him shit to do. That training with Opal? It happens off screen. Say what you want about the earlier game's storytelling, but at least we saw Silver go from an asshole to a slightly better asshole. I guess much like Rose, I'm not exactly mad at Bede, but more disappointed in how little of his journey we get to see. Moving on to Marnie. Despite her friends from Team Yell interfering in the challenge for her benefit, she doesn't exactly approve of that, because all she wants to see is Pierre's get the passion and the hope for being a gym leader again, by becoming the champion herself. All the while, her attitude is, I got nothing here. I think they were going for a more reserved character, but it plays out along the lines of, hey, I guess we're doing the same thing. Good luck. Touching on Team Yell though, they are probably the second worst antagonists in the series so far. Though the phrase antagonist might be a bit generous. Because what do Team Yell really do to get in your way? Blocking routes like a common slowpoke? Yelling at Pokemon to try to encourage them, or harassing poor cyclists? I'm not asking for every evil team to be a 12th dimensional supervillain planning to take over the world. Just make them something more than a minor nuisance. Have them ambush you in the middle of gym challenges trying to stop your progress. It would be nothing unredeemable, but still giving them more to do than just being walking roadblocks. And it would fit with their inspiration from punk rock. Team Yell seems to be emulating a lot of what Game Freak did with Team Skull back in Sun and Moon. But part of what made those guys work is how up close and personal you got with their leader, Guzma. Was he goofy? Yes. But he just had a certain charisma about him, and they built up his character as it went along. As for Piers, he appears way too late in the game. The idea of a gym leader who is disheartened enough to throw in the towel is interesting, but his existence and the fact that Team Yell are actually his gym trainers kinda just phases into the story. And since we're basically on the league's doorstep right now, throwing yet another loose end at us just feels clumsy. To wrap this all up in a little bow, I think the most unfortunate part about Marnie is everything around her is so much more interesting to talk about than her. Anyway, getting back to the characters instead of summarizing them, Leon and his Charizard made quick work of that Dynamax Pokemon, though Sonia starts to realize, hey, maybe we should figure out what caused the random giant Pokemon with the red crisis guys. And like on cue, Magnolia reveals herself to say she's already on the case. Though asking Rose about what he knows proved fruitless as he just kept rambling on about sustainable energy for Galar. And with all the data being useless, Magnolia then starts to trust Sonia with looking into this as she believes it's tied to the darkest day. The two depart, and as for us, it's time we head into the castle and finally complete this bad boy. The final challenge of Galar is, drumroll please, defeating free trainers in double battles. Wow. We're living dangerously, aren't we, Scalebound? I mean, the AI is a cut above the average, but ending with this one, it's a bit deflating, isn't it? It's a medieval castle, imagine all the puzzles and shit you could do with it. The funniest part to me though, is despite Ryan saying these guys are really good, each one of them only has 2 Pokemon in their stock. And I don't care how many strategies you can pull off. If every trainer only has 2 Pokemon, it's game over, man! At least the trainers aren't just restricted to Dragon type. Ryan also goes down surprisingly quick, but then again it does help his gym from not dragging on. Exiting after that crowning achievement, we run into the Professor again. The mysteries of Dynamax, the inconsistencies of the Darkest Day, and the mysterious phenomena from Hammerlock. It all seems to be converging into one mystery, and it's one that the professor is entrusting, as well as her lab coat, to Sonia. No time for dilly-dallying though. We gotta get on the next train to Winden for the championship. But not before heading through the permafrosted Route 10. After surprisingly not freezing our balls off, guess we're nearing the end. It's all gonna come together here at the championship. No opening critique this time around. We need to beeline straight for the championship. Well, after making sure we're presentable, of course. Galar, unlike many other regions, doesn't have an Elite Four. It has a bracketed tournament so they can reuse assets. I kid. It's a good spin to battle characters you're already acquainted with, just with more on the line this time. First round, Marty. She's really gunning for the championship herself. And if we lose, she tells us it's neppin' personnel, kid. Truly the stereotypical scene girl. Look, Edge Queen, I love your gusto. But the truth is you have a snowflake's chance in hell. Well, you know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. As I said, snowflake's chance in hell. Second in the bracket, Hop. This battle's got him really fired up, but unfortunately after rain. God damn it, you're still doing this shit in the semifinals, really? And we finish off the battle with the same salve we started the game with, which annihilates his Cinderace despite being 5 levels lower than it. See why I didn't use it in the gym battles? Though with the resulting weather, I guess Hop can take a rain check. Our battles caused Leon to open his tear ducts. But more importantly, his wallet, offering to cover the bill for some dinner reservations. Getting back to the hotel and after fending off some paparazzi for us, Hop just hopes Leon isn't late.
Many hours later.
What, was the champ bitten by a radioactive sloth on his way over? Thankfully, Pierce is here to inform us that Leon's busy at Rose Tower. He's happy to show us the way there, if it means he's able to start a little bit of trouble with Team Yell. We run into Lena and she lets us know that's not happening. She's making sure Leon and Rose are uninterrupted. She gives the key to the one employee that she really trusts. So I guess this is going to be a goose chase for that guy with the glasses. So make a long story short, we corner Doug Funny over here, but he doesn't cough up the key, instead deciding to flee to the monorail. Following his trail, Piers decides to make a little bit of a distraction by doing a street show. Wait, a mild jog like that was enough to get you to drop the keys from your pocket? Did Rose put being clumsy as a job requirement for Macros Cosmos? Sneaking through a rear entrance, our infiltration into Rose's tower begins. This is probably one of the weirdest sections I've ever experienced in a video game. You hear the song in the background now? It's titled Storming Rose Tower. It's this climactic boss battle tier theme. So what's the situation to go with it? Try an elaborate, giant, glorified elevator. There's a couple battles, but come on, you're mostly riding the elevator. And I'm not saying this is a negative necessarily. It just felt so weird I kept laughing the entire elevator ride. So I guess, thank you, Game Freak, for tickling a funny bone of an old, cynical fool, albeit a bit unintentionally. So now it's time to confront Rose's right-hand woman. Her efforts being in vain drives her insane. New plan, beat the ever-loving snot out of us in a battle to get Leon depressed. In that state, Leon will do whatever Rose wants him to. I'll give props to the battle theme here as well. It really captures the feeling of her mental deterioration. And after showing her true ace in the hole, the trash man, her plan B ends in a resounding failure. Though according to her, we're not so much lucky with Rose. His plan's already in motion. And as we walk away, she starts to have the same crisis that Bede did. So we approach Rose and should probably explain that this part of the cutscene is entirely still art. It sticks out since it's the only time something like this happens in-game. Was their budget starting to wear thin here? Wouldn't it be the worst cost-cutting measure I've ever seen? Anyway, jumping back to the conversation, whatever Rose's plan actually is, he needs to cancel the tournament for it, which Leon retorts the issue he's trying to solve won't be for thousands of years. So why the rush? Rose says they must go quickly as possible as one day could be the difference between Galar's future success or failure. Leon just breaks down and says, look, Rose, I get your concerns, 100%. Just give me the championship tomorrow, and I give my word I will help you. Back into 3D Model Land, Hop asks Leon what the hell happened to make him miss dinner. Leon tells us we could just go back in the hotel and order whatever we want. It's on him. I'll accept your offer, but hey, it's your bankruptcy. As we depart, the chairman mutters under his breath how tomorrow he will change the course of history. Once we wake up the next day, it's time for the final bracket. And with the intro ceremony, let the final matches begin. Wait. An interruption? This better be damn good. Oh, Bede! Knew you would find a way to weasel yourself in somehow, you little scamp. The kid still has a score to settle with us. He's putting his career on the line as well, so if he loses, that's it for him as a trainer. Leon gives the thumbs up for Bede's challenge, so let's let this warm-up begin proper. He's able to hold on to a lot of his older Pokemon, despite the change from Psychic to Fairy. Oh, the wonders of having two types. So once we kick the kid's ass, he's gracefully accepts it. Okay, what the fuck? I gotta figure out if they lived this edgy little bastard. This all goes back to him being trained by Opal. Which, fun fact, she's been a gym leader for around 70 years. Which, unless we go by the multiverse theory, only believed by weird dragon people who believe they've seen a Sinbad genie movie in their life, would be long before fairy types were classified. Fairy types were introduced in Gen 6. Divide 6 by the games they remade, Gen 3, you get 2. Gen 2, the only other gen that introduced new types. The two there were Steel and Dark, though Dark is the more interesting one of the bunch. You see, because in Japanese, it's referred to as Evil type. And what does Gen 8 introduce? A Fairy Dark type, which might sound like a contradiction, but in myth, fairies were kinda dicks that relied on trickery to get their way, toying with humans in the process. So, what the hell does this all mean? I think I uncovered something. Look, I'm not fucking crazy. I don't need my medication. Fairy types are out to destroy the rest of the Pokemon world. And they're gonna start by poisoning the... What the fuck have I been talking about for the last minute again? Oh yeah, Beatty! Despite his loss, the crowd gives him a standing ovation, telling him not to quit but restart. This wasn't in Bede's plan, he was just gonna use this to get away from Opal. Bede blames us for having to stay in. Though he remarks with his talents, it would be pretty easy to overtake her. So you're still the same smug, confident contender. So now for the Gym Leader Cup. It was pretty uneventful. Each one seemed easier than the last. So Ryan, if Leon really considers you as equal, I hope he can put up a better fight. After some words of encouragement from Hop, I guess we're about to figure out. Well, that's one way to make a surprise appearance. Rose calls us to let us know he's going ahead with his batshit insane plan anyway, which as shown by the power overflowed equipment and the giant red pillars all over Galar, was a smart move. And just to rub salt in the wound, Rose proclaims that all of this happened because Leon wouldn't listen. Chairman Rose is quite possibly the worst Pokemon villain ever. And that's not due to a lack of competition, mind you. Where to even begin? I guess his plan is a good start. You remember how Bede was collecting wishing stars? That was a part of this scheme, because the wishing stars are actually a part of an ancient entity, known as Eternatus, the very same one that caused the Darkest Day thousands of years ago. Rose would take these and feed it to Eternatus, leading to the Darkest Day 2. Though I guess the more common term nowadays is soft reboots. This would release a massive amount of Dynamax energy, preventing the energy problem in 1,000 years. And with Leon's help he could... Thinking about it, how the hell would Leon even help? He's a strong trainer, sure, but it seems like he was banking on him more than Macros Cosmos' massive amounts of technology. Imagine if a billionaire philanthropist held a skating tournament, but just before the final round took Tony Hawk aside to ask for his help. Hey, Tony, sorry to break this to you, but we're gonna cancel the final round of the skating competition. But that's because we need you to ollie on this track. You see, it's the only way we can stabilize our newly constructed nuclear power plant. Safeguards? Yeah, we got that. We put a refrigerator at the top to keep the heat consistent. But we don't need that, all we need is your ollie. What? I sound like a lunatic who has no idea what he's talking about? How dare you, Tony? Don't you care about the future of skateboarding? Oh, you need a day to think about it? Wrong answer! You better ollie, Tony, or all those deaths are gonna be on your head. And there's so much more wrong with his plan, you could make a list. Which I did. I know everyone finds it ridiculous that he couldn't wait one more day for Leon to get on board, but I'm more curious why he didn't use that time to research more into the forces he's dealing with. Because by the time he pulls the trigger, he seems just as confused as he was earlier about it. Speaking of research, why not get Magnolia involved? Instead he just leaves Olina to deal with it. Considering this woman was what helped you get a hold of Dynamax in the first place, all you would need to say is, hey, I think I might have been able to find the origin point of Dynamax. Can you help me find a way to get this power out safely? You would kill two birds with one stone. Building off that, was it just Rose and Olina doing it solo with occasional help from Beatty and counseling from Leon? Or were Macros Cosmos employees involved? And if that's the case, did they know the risks? I'm just asking this one for the sake of the insurance guy. He's in for a rude awakening tomorrow. What about the spectators? Closing this down on such short notice, civilians will be caught in the crossfire. Do you have an evacuation plan? He didn't exactly execute it if he did. And finally, You and Leon already had issues with the random Dynamaxing Pokemon resulting from these experiments. Why do you think the Pokemon equivalent of a H.P. Lovecraft Elder God would be doable? I wouldn't have this much of a problem with Rose if the game didn't portray him like they did. They try to show him as a person whose heart was in the right place, but went down the wrong path due to being too rash and short-sighted. When the truth is, he's an idiot that put hundreds, if not thousands of lives in danger, because he couldn't just wait on a couple people to help him. I think even Lysander, a genocidal maniac who didn't care about most of the world, took more precaution for protecting his grunts than Rose did for anyone in Galar. And he's not a particularly good villain either. So I'm sorry, game. When you give him a battle theme that makes Sephiroth's look tame in comparison, I won't think of how tragic it is that he went down this path. Instead, I'll be thinking, wow, the only thing he's exceptional at is being exceptionally stupid. Though it is more pressing to focus less on the man and more of the situation he caused. You know what? For once, I'm actually happy to see you, Hop. Leon decides he's gonna bolt it straight to where Rose is, regretting he didn't pick up on this sooner.
I blame myself. So do I.
Hop wants to help stop this crazy shit, but considering he loses to us all the time, he thinks he would just be dead weight. Though he gets the bright idea. Rose is trying to recreate the catastrophe of the Darkest Day, right? Well, why don't we take the part of the heroes of legend and try to find the Pokemon that saved the world? And the last place they were seen? Back home at the Slumbering Weald. Oh hey Sonia, how's it feel to be like one of those scientists in those disaster movies? She's a bit surprised. So absorbed in studying the Slumbering Weald, she didn't even hear what happened at the tournament. But as soon as she hears the phrase Darkest Day, she gets the full picture. She'll catch up to us once she's done looking into something. Our team's not the only thing that leveled up since our first visit. We're lucky the dog saved us when he did. These things would have kicked our asses. And as the fog intensifies, we meet the two legends themselves. They aren't exactly kings of hospitality though, disappearing into the fog. Though thanks to Sonia, at least we got some names. Zakchian and Zemazata. Going further in the forest doesn't help us much. All we can find are the two's rusty and broken sword and shield. Though Hop has some hope that these two artifacts will help us stop the Darkest Day from rampaging on. Going to Hammerlock Stadium, Olina begs for us to save Rose from the madness he's unleashed. Though Rose himself, not so receptive to the idea. He doesn't expect us to understand his plan, but that for him, his destiny is awaking Eternatus. There is a misunderstanding here. Let me clear it up. Rose, I get your plan. That's why I find it fucking horrifying. Even though our battle made Rose's plans crushed to scrap, he's still humble in defeat. He asks us and Hop to check up on Leon. After all, he must have captured Eternatus by now. Hop, please don't compliment the psychopath. We catch up with Leon as he whittles down Eternatus to a very weak state. Wow, that capture failure was so bad, Leon earned a new title. The Legendary Deadweight. With Leon down for the count, Eternatus decides to turn his sights onto us. Also, am I just crazy, or does this great old one kind of look like that germ they had to fight in Jimmy Neutron? But you see, this is just its first form. Its second one is... what in the name of... is that? That's so overdesigned it makes Chemtrail look like Mickey Mouse. Well, whatever it is, it's freezing us solid right now. Though Hop has the idea to use the sword and the shield. I think our little stunt has given those old dogs some new tricks. Showing up to back us up, their presence restores their weaponry, along with themselves, to their former glory. At this point, the battle just becomes a scripted, story-focused max raid. Allowing these two Pokemon that make very easy work of Eternatus around does get the point across of showing their power. And the music would be pretty good too if it wasn't for that goddamn howling. Though that's not a problem for much longer. With Eternatus weakened, let's see if we can succeed where Leon failed. 1, 2, 3. We fucking...
3 days later.
With the day saved, the armored dogs took their leave, while Rose turned himself in, unfortunately not to a mental institution. And Hop approaches us to let us know that Leon's waiting our challenge. Oh yeah, that's right, the championship. Totally didn't forget about that. Heading over to Winden Stadium with all of our adoring fans pointing us out. It's time to end this thing with a bang. And with the house packed, there's no better time than to put on our best battle we've ever had. And woo boy, that sure happened with me. Even after grinding for a while to get up to his level, Leon seemed insurmountable. God fucking damn it, that's where the kid gets it from. No, really, it got to a point against his Charizard where I had to use my Bronzong, try to rely on hypnosis to get him to sleep, and even use a couple potions. Though with a simple hex of bad luck, it seems Leon's streak has come to an end. Leon congratulates us for our victory. And the last quote he says before leaving the stadium is that we should all work forward to make that brighter future we one day want to see. And on that note, the curtains start to close on our story. Man, even with that good final battle, that climax kinda sucked. There's a reason they usually space out the legendary encounter and the championship from each other. And the only time they ever had one after another, they just omitted the champion's battle because both would be such a slog to get through, putting him instead in the post-game. This one's problem though is it functions sorta like a conjoined twin. Neither plot thread really gives time for the other to grow. Look at Olena for example. Her arc is introduced and then finished in around 30 minutes. Most of which she isn't really there. This is since once we locate Leon and go back to the hotel, the next section of the game focuses on Bede's battle and picking up the pieces of his life. And the transition between the two is never smooth. They both just feel like they interrupt each other. And another issue with structuring your plots like this is if one really fucking sucks. Much like a middle school group assignment, the whole thing goes down. Look, despite my jesting about him, I kinda liked Leon. Was he somewhat naive? Yes. Hell, he's not even my favorite champion. But to show what would happen if a childhood champ grew up and continued his streak, it's honestly a really good hook, and him having to deal with the increasing complexity of morality as he ages, along with trying to be an inspiration for those around him, it's kinda sweet. But that whole plotline being so close to his battle ruins it all for me. He deserved fucking better. Though at least now I could finally put a wrap on this video. Though let's double check the game a bit first. Oh, that's a cool new title screen, and... oh, there's a post-game. Damn it! I'm gonna try to keep it quick since this is just a giant victory lap around Galar. So aside from the post-game story, what do you unlock once you beat the league? Well, first off, you can re-challenge the championship, but with a twist. It's not always the same trainers, and you can invite certain ones if you fancy a battle with them, which to the game's credit, keeps it fresher than it would be otherwise. You can also re-battle Marnie alone at Spikemouth. Rose's Tower is now able to have battles. Yeah, it's the same copy-paste facility, but the music isn't. They actually got Toby Fox to do a guest song for this one, and it sounds pretty rockin'. It's apparently based on some old Homestuck track he did called The Baby Is You. It's part of a genre I never heard of called Mpreg. You know what, let's listen to it right now. Pretty damn good. I'll just have this on while playing another game, just letting the album take me wherever it goes.
Thanks everyone. You know, looking into my little baby eyes just after having given birth to myself has really opened my own...
How does this series find new and interesting ways to hurt me? This time somehow when I'm not even playing it? So after losing what little faith in humanity I had, let's finish off with trainer cards. There was an aspect of them I didn't touch on, mostly to avoid spoilers. Most of the important trainers that you encounter throughout the story will give you a trainer card. And the description that comes with them does expand on their characters beyond what we see in the main story. And it just proves to me that even if its execution isn't perfect, Sword and Shield's characters are at their best in a sort of slice-of-life, normal environment than anything too grand or world-ending. Well, with all that out of the way, I guess it's safe to recap the postgame now, right? Here goes nothing. Heading into the Weald, we find Hop. Apparently this place has been calling to him. Naturally, this leads to him wanting a rematch. In the aftermath, Sonia shows up to talk about her book deal. Wait, you wrote one that quickly. Who would you pay to be a ghostwriter? Fraud or not, Sonia King over here suggests we put back the artifact. Good idea. I don't exactly want to owe Forces of Nature late fees. What hair salon disaster did these guys walk out of? These walking mannequins didn't really appreciate Sonia's book, as they are self-proclaimed descendants of Galar's royalty. Our team is able to stop them from pilfering the shield. Hop just can't keep up, losing the sword. Retreating to the lab and meeting Sonia's new assistant, when those self-important assholes got close to us, the power spot detector went crazy. So if we follow the readings, we might be able to pin these guys down. So our goal is to go all around every gym in Galar, see which ones have a rampaging Pokemon overflowing with Dynamax particles, and along with Hop and Piers, battle the Pokemon down to its smaller state. And I'm all down for hanging out more time with Piers and finding out when Dynamax skeeves him out a little bit. But it's paired up with Hop's returning emotional issues. Due to his loss from Sorward, the man with how do I put this? A follically endowed hairline. After solving a couple of the gym's problems, the twins just straight up waltz into the lab uninvited. The demand for the wishing star is kept here after Rose's little incident. Double teaming them only slows the plan down as they have an inside woman. You see, Sonia, this is why you don't hire interns off of Craigslist. More gym leaders need our help. Aside from Bede, who after taking on his Dynamax Pokemon, tries to kick our ass again. Kid, you know there's a thing called slowing down, right? Opal, what the fuck did you mean you influenced his decisions? I swear, you witch, if you give me any more of these vibes, I will send you into a spell you will never wake. Oh shit, the two idiots are having a posse in the power plant. Yeah, I know, Piers. Phantom claps scare me almost as much as phantom singing. Shieldbird explains that the plan all along was to pin all the Dynamax incidents on the legendaries, since their very existence harms the legend of their ancestors. Before, stuff like the mural covered up their existence pretty well, but ever since the Eternatus incident, Cat's been out of the bag, capping it all off by leaving the dogs corrupted and violent. Plan works a bit too well. Zacian, being unable to contain its power, lashes out at Sword. Even our team can barely put a dent in him. All hope seems lost until Zamazenta comes in to guard Hop. Going through an ordeal like that, Zamazenta has finally found us to be a trainer worthy of its power. Hop phones us to let us know he's tracked Zacian back home. Hop's body is surprisingly not mincemeat, having enough self-confidence for one final rematch. And for the first time, he felt great after losing. And using the experiences from helping out at the stadiums, he figures out that his dream was to be a Pokemon professor, helping Pokemon out anywhere he can. Hope that goes well. Leon and crew decide to make their presence known in order to congratulate us. The two dunces decide to take their leave, starting their massive apology tour. Leon decides to tell Hop the one thing he always wanted to hear. No matter what he does, not only as his brother, but as his rival, he has his full support. Hop, finally feeling like he lived up to his idol, closes the story of valor and legacy. I want to go over a few odds and ends before I finish this video off. Stuff that's sorta outside of the game, but separated so I can talk about without bogging the rest of the video down. To address the elephant in the room, yeah, no DLC this time. It'll probably get its own follow-up video, mostly for my and your sanity. I've heard good things, but even if it addresses some of my criticisms, it's not in the base game, so it's separated out like laundry. And I know I didn't touch on every aspect of the game. Like, say, the meta, which I heard is good. For now, anyway. But with Gen 8, nothing really flows well enough to make me want to spend dozens of hours playing competitive battles. From raids, to the regional gimmick, to even the UI. Plus, I was never really in that scene, so I'll leave that to the people that know their shit. I didn't forget anything, did I? It's time to talk about Dexit. Originally, I wasn't going to cover this, since every influencer and their mom has given their opinion. Hell, I'm pretty sure some political candidates even have. But fuck it, this horse is so dead and decaying, it won't mind one more beating, right? So for the uninitiated, let me try to explain it to the best of my recollection. E3 2019, the shit show begins. Masuda gets out on a unscripted Nintendo Treehouse Live to say that the decks will be cut, and that Pokemon from outside of Galar's decks will not be transferable in the games.
So what that means for Pokemon Sword and Shield is that players will be able to transfer their Pokemon from Pokemon Home only if they appear in the Galar region Pokedex.
I'm excited to see how the story unfolds and to explore both the region and the wild area.
In interviews, the reasonings ranged from the sheer size of the roster, to needing to redo the models, to balancing. You know, from the same series that had Mega Rayquaza, Mega Kangaskhan. A couple days before the release, the game's leaked, revealing that 50% of Pokemon would not be making the cut. Data miners also got their hands on the models. What they found was they were near, or exactly, like the 3DS ones. Coincidentally, as soon as this news broke, Game Freak canceled the launch party citing operational concerns. All of these proved to be the perfect storm for a good old session of internet shit-flinging. As of October 28th, 2020, the updates released around the expansion pass have restored 208 of the over 450 cut species. Again, this is more of a Cliff Notes version, so if you want something that delves deeper into the handling or mishandling of this controversy, I'll link a video by a user named Standby. The guy's apparently experienced at PR and gives a very neutral breakdown of what went wrong here, plus he's less mentally unhinged than yours truly. As for my layman's take on it, I think Activision even did a better job when they were talking about how they had to cut songs from Tony Hawk. And that's Activision, you know, video game Satan. More like Beelzebub. Konami and EA are much worse. But that more so indicates Game Freak's horrendous PR. Aside from a statement Masuda made on Twitter, every time they talked about it was sort of messy and like they were addressing it by the seat of their pants. Though for me, Dexit isn't really a fatal flaw with the game. It's much more like a thumbtack that you stepped on after walking through a carpet of Legos. It's just a side effect of the Pokemon series' biggest problem.
All within, a limited development time, so we don't keep fans waiting too long for every new entry into the series.
Limited is one word to describe it. 1 year of pre-production, and overall from debug to finished product around 3, which for one project perfectly workable, but Game Freak split their studio working on 3 separate titles. And the coup de grace, since the 3DS was just a slightly less powerful GameCube, all 3 games were in a way Game Freak's jump to HD development. The graphical jump that screwed so many devs over when they were trying to go to the PS3 and Xbox 360. And this is just that, but cubed. And this rush sort of development makes a lot of the places where Sword and Shield seems show through, like say, the wild area or the story, make a lot more sense. It's hard to exactly polish something when you're just rushing to get it done, or it'll really make a substantial post-game. I'm no game dev, but this is just basic scheduling shit. In terms of the state of the series, there's an even amount of blame here. Nintendo for not really having much else for the winter after they delayed Animal Crossing, the Pokemon Company for needing that new merch every fucking year, getting one out there, and Game Freak for this bizarre developmental structure. Again though, Dexit didn't really push me in one way or another to actually making this. Though the conversation around it, that's another story. There's been some good content about Dexit from both sides of the aisle, but a lot of it feels like it's made for money, ego, or the lust for influence. I'm not trying to go over one particular creator to call him out. So get it, Suzubo Jackie? Don't... Whether it be 25 low-effort videos a week talking about how Game Freak has shat on the consumer, arguing they are standing up to fight for the little guy, or it be some Poketuber getting some giant crucifix, learning some carpentry, buying some nails, all to do a bit to say, please forgive them, Game Freak-sama. They have no idea what they are talking about. Let me die for your sins so I can get free press coverage. For you see, I am an ambassador of this community. And I'm not saying that I have a stick up my ass about people ranting or even making shitposts about the whole situation. Hell, this whole review is one giant shitpost in some ways, but the whole cynical profiteering just pissed me off. I just missed the days when people made videos for passion and not just to jump on the next current craze. Though I guess the East-Levs of those times might have had their own problems as well. Fuck, I'm starting to drift off more than a year-old Joy-Con. It's time to start putting the brakes on this thing. Gleaming through Schwarbage's interviews has been a bit enlightening, to say the least. One choice quote came from the director of the past couple of installments, Shigeru Omori, where he said Galar was built around the theme of strength, which gave me a bit of a chuckle, because much like the legends of Goliath or Achilles, every new strength introduced seems to have some oversights. This is where a typical internet snarky reviewer would say, despite being a series about evolution, Pokemon stagnation is similar to a single-celled organism. Because just like in an ecosystem, a series' evolution is a long-term process, and putting shit out year in and year out doesn't really give you much time for introspection. Now, am I saying if Schwarbage had more dev time, would it have been a better game? I don't know, maybe? A lot of my issues are more than skin deep, but for something like a Gen 9, I could see it helping. Both of these words don't summarize the Schwarbage experience though. The one that does is legacy. Every character's story is tied to it in some way. Rose trying to solidify his, Beatty trying to carve out his own, and Marnie running away from following up her brothers. And the game's design philosophy also reflects this. Omori explained that since this is the first mainline Pokemon game to debut on console, they wanted to make the ultimate Pokemon game. Just a boilerplate PR statement? Probably, but certain parts of the game do feel like that's the intention. The wild area, for, all of its faults, is still a much more open area than we've seen in the series before. The game's presentation does try for a more grand and important feeling. And some fan requests did pop up in here. It was bold in how it tried to follow up a series that's close to many people's hearts. It was too headstrong though, attempted too many things, and for me at least, fell apart under the pressure. It's going to be very interesting to see the reception to Sword and Shield over the next couple years. Galar's legacy, if you will. Will it be Dexit? The sales numbers? The storyline? The porn? Okay, probably that. I think I have a general idea of how I'll remember it though. Is it the worst game I've ever played? No, that's still this piece of shit. Fuck you, Yek. Still, it's far from being the ultimate Pokemon game, let alone a high-ranking JRPG itself. To be upfront, I have had problems with the way the series has been since around, Gen 6. So to see not only the flaws I've had with the 3DS games pop up here, but joined by entirely new ones, it's exhausting in a way. I can't say I regret playing these games, though, because what making this video was a very explorative experience. Well, more explorative than Galar itself anyway. And while I will return to this game for the DLC, I can't help but feel like this video wrap-up is a goodbye. Plus, it got me to finally articulate all those flaws I've had for years. So, thanks, Schwarbage. But you could have been so much more. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to EndSlate. I am recording this November 14th, 2020, a day before Sword and Shield's anniversary. Feels longer though, since this project started around the same time, the thing in the air happened, the coof! Making this was a good learning experience though. Next time I'm gonna go in a bit more scripted, because while I think this one turned out well, and I love the off-the-cuff nature of it, it did cause me to have a little bit of a speaker's block, if you will. Hopefully the DLC has a shorter turnaround. I also would like to thank my friends who looked over the video and said what they thought was good, what they thought was bad. It helped push me forward a lot. Anyway, I'm heading out. I don't want to see an editing bay in a fucking week after I release this, so I'm just gonna fuck off and play some Yakuza. If someone actually stumbles on this, I'd love to hear your feedback, and again, stay safe out there. 2020 is kind of fucking crazy. No looker though, so the game's shit. The final score is a 0 out of 3.1459265359973284.